I stood by the staircase with a tray in my hands, sweat trickling down my back from rushing around all day, when I heard my aunt, Valerie, laugh and say to her guests, "Oh, don't mind Emily. She's more like house staff than family." They laughed. I smiled. And I died a little inside. The house I grew up in, where I learned to walk, read, and grieve. I had become invisible in it. A background extra in someone else's story. I wasn't invited to the table. I served it. I was 27 and had lived in that estate my whole life, raised by relatives after my mom died. And yet, in their eyes, I was still just the help. But what they didn't know was that my name was on the deed, and I was done being quiet. Have you ever been made to feel invisible by the people closest to you? Comment where you're watching from if you've ever been treated like you didn't belong, even in your own home. I still remember the sound of the rain that night. The tires screeched once, then nothing. No screams. No last words. Just silence. That was the night my mother died. I was 8 years old. I didn't understand what immediate guardian transfer meant. I didn't understand why adults whispered in corners when I entered the room. All I knew was that I packed my favorite hoodie, my pink unicorn pillow, and the last photo of Mom and me, taken just a week before the accident at Coney Island. They said my aunt would take me in. Aunt Valerie. My mother's older sister. I had only met her once before, at my mom's wedding. I was too young to remember anything except the perfume she wore. It smelled like cold flowers. Expensive and distant. When I arrived at her mansion in upstate New York, the first thing I saw was the fountain. It was bigger than our entire apartment back in Queens. White marble angels, frozen in motion, pouring water from their hands. It looked surreal, almost like I was entering someone else's life. And I guess I was. Valerie opened the front door herself, wearing a pearl necklace and a navy blue pantsuit. Not a hair out of place. Her lips curved into a tight, controlled smile. "Welcome, Emily," she said. "You had quite the week, haven't you?" Her voice was smooth but lacked warmth, like she was reading a script. She led me inside, without touching me. No hug. No hand on my shoulder. Inside, everything sparkled. A grand staircase. Oil paintings on the wall. A chandelier the size of a car. And on the stairs stood a little girl. Blonde curls, ballet slippers, and a stuffed bear in her arms.
"Hi," she said.
"I'm Madison. Are you my new sister or my new maid?" Valerie gasped softly. "Madison, that's not polite." I smiled anyway. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know where I fit. They gave me a room. Not one of the big guest suites. Just a small, tidy space on the second floor, across from the laundry chute and next to the linen closet. "There's a uniform closet at the end of the hall," said the housekeeper, Mrs. Raymond, when she showed me around. "But don't worry, sweetheart. That's not for you. Your family." But words are cheap. And soon, I began to see the difference between what people say and what they do. I was enrolled at Madison School, a prestigious private academy filled with well-dressed children and perfectly packed lunches. On the first day, Aunt Valerie kissed Madison on the forehead and handed her a monogrammed tote. Then she turned to me, handed me a brown paper bag, and said, "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I packed turkey." That's when I began noticing everything was equal, but not really. When Madison got new boots, I got her old ones. When Madison had birthday parties, I helped clean up afterward. And when Christmas came around, Madison unwrapped a Tiffany necklace. I unwrapped a used Kindle with a half-charged battery and someone else's name still registered on it. I told myself it was fine. I had a bed. I had food. I was safe. That was more than many people had. But the older I got, the clearer it became. I wasn't part of the family. I was part of the property. Uncle David was different. He had soft eyes and a kind heart. Sometimes he'd sneak an extra cookie onto my plate or leave handwritten notes in my books. "Keep reading. Your mind is gold. Your mom would be proud." He was the only one who ever mentioned her. Valerie never spoke about my mother. Not once. Not even on her death anniversary. Not even when I asked. "She made her choices," she once said coldly. "And now we all live with them." That line stuck with me. It clung to my chest like smoke that wouldn't clear. By the time I turned 15, Valerie had a routine for me. She'd call them small favors. Could you set the table before guests arrive? Just make sure the staff has the right seating chart. Oh, Emily, run upstairs and steam Madison's dress, won't you? She's running behind. The first few times, I didn't mind. I wanted to be helpful. I wanted to prove I was worth keeping around. But then it grew. One summer, they hosted a garden party for the family's law firm clients. White tents, jazz music, lobster rolls. Madison twirled around in a Vera Wang dress. I spent the day coordinating deliveries and wiping down glassware. A guest turned to Valerie and asked, "Who's the new event planner?" "She's fantastic." Valerie smiled and didn't correct him. That was the first time I realized I was being used but dressed up as useful. I remember my 17th birthday. There was no party, no cake, just a card on my dresser. It wasn't signed, just typed words. "Remember your place, and you'll always have one." I don't know if it was Valerie or the housekeeper, but I cried for hours. Not because I wanted a party, but because no one cared I existed. Madison walked by my room that night and said, "Oh, I thought you'd left for the weekend." That hurt more than any insult. To be forgotten. To be nothing. There were small moments of light. When I graduated high school, Uncle David handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. $5,000. No note. Just a small sticky on the back that read, "Start something of your own. Don't let them tell you who you are." I don't know what he knew, but I think he saw it all. I worked hard. I applied for colleges on my own. I didn't ask for help. I didn't expect it. I got into SUNY Albany and took the cheapest dorm possible. I worked 2 jobs. Saved every cent. And every break, every summer, every holiday, I came back to the estate. Because I had nowhere else to go. And every time, Valerie would hand me a to-do list. "Since you're home, could you tidy the library?" "Oh, and the windows in the East Wing need polishing. You know how much the chef likes it when you help organize the kitchen. You're so good with labels." Every compliment was a leash. Every task was a chain. Winter. Year before Uncle David passed. Big family dinner. Madison had just gotten engaged. There were guests from out of town, so Valerie insisted everything be impeccable. I spent the whole day decorating, arranging seating, helping the florist. When the party started, I went upstairs to shower. When I came back down, Valerie looked me up and down and said, "Could you please stay behind the scenes tonight? It's important that the guests know who's who." I said, quietly, "I am family." She tilted her head and said, "Sweetheart, family is more than blood. It's presentation. It's grace. It's dignity." Then she whispered, "And let's be honest, you've always been better in the background." That line shattered something in me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to leave. I wanted to tell her I hated her, that I hated this entire rotten charade. But I didn't. I took a breath. I nodded. And I disappeared into the shadows like I always did. That night, I sat in the laundry room and wrote in my journal, "One day, this house will know who I am." I didn't know how. I didn't have a plan. But something inside me changed that night. Something that refused to stay quiet anymore. Months later, Uncle David fell ill. Cancer. Fast-moving. Ruthless. Final. And when the dust settled, when the funeral was over, when the guests had gone home, when Valerie poured herself a glass of wine and toasted to moving forward, a letter arrived. From his lawyer. A letter that would unravel every illusion this family had built. And hand me the keys to the very house that tried to erase me. People think betrayal comes in one sharp, brutal strike, like a knife between the ribs, unexpected and sudden. But sometimes betrayal is quieter. It drips, one small act at a time. A word unspoken here, a moment ignored there, until you wake up one day and realize you were never loved the way you thought. The estate was buzzing with preparations for Madison's bridal shower. I had come home from college early to help out, though no one had asked what I needed. I had just finished a major project. Pulled 3 all-nighters. All I wanted was sleep. And maybe, just maybe, someone to say, "We're proud of you." Instead, I walked into the estate to find Valerie already at the door, clipboard in hand. "Emily, thank God you're here early. The caterers are behind schedule and we need more place cards printed." I hesitated. "Actually, I haven't even." She cut me off. "You can freshen up later. The guests arrive at noon." And just like that, I became invisible again. Swept into errands, tasks, responsibilities. All while Madison got a massage upstairs. Later that day, I overheard Madison talking to one of her friends. "I don't know what I'd do without Emily. She's like my personal wedding fairy." The friend laughed. "Is she, like, your planner?" Madison giggled. "No, she's family. But, like, honorary. You know." Then she paused. "Well, kind of like the way you think of someone who lives with you, but doesn't really have a title." My stomach turned. Honorary? No title? I felt like a stray dog they let inside when it rains. Weeks after Uncle David's funeral, the family gathered in the library. His attorney, Mr. Grant, stood by the fireplace with a stack of folders. His hands trembled slightly as he looked around the room. Valerie, Madison, a few cousins, and me. Mr. Grant cleared his throat. "David made some amendments to the will about 8 months before his passing. Some of this may come as a surprise." Valerie shifted in her seat. "He would have told me if anything changed." Mr. Grant ignored her. He opened the folder and read. "To my wife, Valerie, I leave our joint holdings, her personal jewelry, and the vacation home in Vermont. To Madison, my daughter, I leave the trust fund as agreed." A pause. "And to Emily Carter, I leave the full rights, ownership, and inheritance of the primary estate located at 17 Willow Bridge Lane, our home." Silence. Utter silence. You could have heard a pin drop. Valerie blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" Mr. Grant continued. "David wished for the estate to be transferred fully to Emily upon his death, believing she was the true heart of this home." Madison sat frozen. Valerie stood slowly. "That must be a mistake," she said. "David was very ill. He wasn't thinking clearly." Mr. Grant's voice grew firm. "He signed the amendment with full legal witnesses. It's binding." I looked around the room. No one met my eyes. In that moment, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt afraid. Because what do people do when they realize they can no longer control you? The next morning, my bedroom door was missing. Not removed, gone. Unhinged. Taken. Just an open frame and a breeze. I asked the house staff what happened. No one had an answer. That same day, my laundry disappeared. 2 weeks' worth of clothes. When I asked Madison, she said with a fake smile, "Maybe you should check the maid's quarters. Old habits die hard." I knew what she meant. I knew exactly what she meant. Valerie hosted a dinner for her country club friends that weekend. As always, I helped prepare. I ironed napkins. Arranged floral centerpieces. When the guests arrived, Valerie greeted them with grace and ice. "This is my niece, Emily," she said to one man. "She's helping out while we reorganize." I looked up, confused. "Helping out?" I asked softly. She smiled, cool as marble. "It's good for her. Teaches structure." A few guests looked at me with pity. That was worse than rage. Worse than being hated. To be pitied. To be seen as someone who had to earn their stay. Later that month, I found out the estate staff had been told to lock the wine cellar. Not just lock it, change the passcode. When I asked why, the head butler said, "Mrs. Valerie instructed us to limit access. She said some people were taking liberties." I said, "Do I look like some people to you?" He looked at the floor. "I just do what I'm told, ma'am."
Ma'am.
That word didn't feel like respect. It felt like pity wrapped in formality. Every week, I tried to assert small authority. Schedule a maintenance repair. Speak with the estate accountant. Approve an interior change. Each time, emails disappeared. Messages went unanswered. I later learned Valerie had instructed the team to run all final approvals through her. "They're just confused," she told me with a shrug. "You're not used to managing these things." That word again. Used to. As if I had no right to learn. I realized what they were doing. They couldn't steal the house from me. So they were trying to make me feel like I didn't belong in it. Like I didn't deserve it. They couldn't deny the will. So they denied me. One night, I found Madison in the garden, sipping wine, wrapped in her fiancé's jacket. I stood by the railing. Did you know about the will? She didn't answer right away. Then she said, Dad made a mistake. You weren't supposed to be anything more than grateful. That word boiled my blood. Grateful. I spent my life scrubbing the floor beneath your feet, I whispered. And you think I should be grateful? Madison didn't look at me. She just said, You were never one of us. That was the moment the fog lifted. I had been trying so hard to be part of something that was never mine to begin with. But here's the thing about people like Valerie and Madison. They're so used to power being inherited. They forget it can also be earned. They forget that sometimes the ones they overlook are the ones carrying the whole house on their back. Loss doesn't knock. It doesn't ring a bell. It just opens the door and walks right in. No warning. No time to prepare. And even when you know it's coming, you're still not ready. I wasn't. It had been weeks since Uncle David could walk on his own. The cancer had eaten through more than just his body. It gnawed at the rhythm of the house, the warmth in his voice, the presence in the hallways. Still, every day after work, I visited him at the care center tucked in the far west wing of the estate. Not out of duty, but out of love. Some days, he'd talk, share old stories of my mother, his favorite lake in Maine, or the first time he met Valerie. Other days, he just wanted someone to hold his hand, to sit in the silence with him, to not treat him like a dying man but a human. Madison didn't visit much. Valerie never did. They said, It's too hard. But that's the thing about love. It does the hard things anyway.
My phone rang.
The kind of ring you feel in your bones. This is Albany Hospice, the nurse said. Mr. Morgan has requested your presence. You should come quickly. The sky was dark. A full moon hung like an omen. I drove in silence. Hands cold. Heart colder. I knew this would be the last time. When I entered the room, he was barely conscious. But when I whispered his name, his eyes opened. Just a sliver. Enough to find me. Enough to remember. I sat beside him.
Held his hand.
And waited. He moved his lips slowly. I leaned in. You were always mine, he whispered. Not by blood. By heart. I gripped his hand tighter, sobbing. I'm here. I'm not leaving. A flicker of a smile danced on his lips. And then, the monitor beside him gave a long, piercing beep. Time stopped. Just like that. He was gone. I came home in the same clothes. The same shoes. The same grief. And yet, the estate was lit up. Florists unloading centerpieces. Staff polishing the silver. Valerie barking orders. Madison laughing on the phone about shrimp cocktails. They were setting up for her engagement brunch. While I had just come from saying goodbye. I walked in. Tired. Smeared eyeliner. Soul hollowed. Valerie saw me and frowned. What happened to you? David's gone, I said. Her face didn't move. Then she blinked. And you didn't think to call me? He asked for me, I replied. I honored his final wish. She glanced at the guests outside. We can't cancel this. We've already paid the vendors. I looked at her with disbelief. You just lost your husband. She looked back with the same expression she always gave me, like I was a stain on her perfect wallpaper. The next day, I met with Mr. Grant, David's personal attorney. He handed me a thick envelope. This is the revised will. David made these changes himself.
Witnessed. Signed.
Official. Inside was a letter, in David's unmistakable handwriting. To Emily, you've always been the only one who truly saw this home for what it was. Not a prize. Not an inheritance. But a legacy. You carried its heart long before anyone gave you permission. And now, I give you something more than permission. I give you the key. Enclosed was the official deed. The entire estate. Mine. I didn't wait. That morning, as the brunch began, I walked into the grand hall dressed in all black. Guests laughed, sipped champagne, smiled for photos. And I clinked a fork against a glass. Everyone, may I have your attention? Valerie turned pale. Madison tried to stop me. Not now. This is.
No.
Now is the only time. Mr. Grant stepped forward with a legal envelope. He read the will out loud, line by line, no details spared. When he reached the part about the estate, the gasps were audible. To Emily Carter, I leave the Morgan estate, all rights and holdings, and the power to manage or dissolve it as she sees fit. She is the only one who earned it not by name, but by soul. Valerie dropped her glass. Madison's eyes widened. That can't be right. This was supposed to be my wedding venue. You think you can just walk in here and take what's ours? Valerie snarled. That house belongs to the Morgans. No, I said. It belongs to David. And David gave it to me. You manipulated him. Took advantage of his sickness. I held up the letter. His signature. His handwriting. His love. He saw who you really were, Valerie. That's why you weren't there when he died. He didn't want to see your face. Her jaw clenched. You little servant girl. No, I said, stepping forward. Not anymore. That night, I walked through every room of the estate. Alone. Every step was a memory. Every wall had a story. My story. This was the house where I cried in closets. Where I folded towels no one thanked me for. Where I watched birthdays from behind a curtain. And now, I was the one turning off the lights. I was the one with the keys. I was the one who stayed. They tried to erase me, but I became the ink. They tried to dismiss me, but I became the signature. And, in the end, it wasn't revenge. It was restoration. The servant became the sovereign. And the house finally had a heart again. It's funny how silence can shape you. For years, I lived in this estate like a ghost in my own story. Seen but not heard. Useful but never valued. Present but never included. But David's death cracked something open inside me. The truth didn't just set me free. It made me fearless. The air in the estate had changed. Valerie still walked the halls like she owned the place. Madison still played hostess in her silk robes, but there was tension in every footstep, because deep down they knew I didn't need to scream. I had the deed, the title, and for the first time in my life,
Power.
that Sunday I called a meeting in the dining room. No guests, no staff, just the three of us. Valerie, Madison,
Me.
They arrived late, of course. Valerie, with a wine glass. Madison scrolling her phone. What is this about? Valerie asked. I gestured to the long oak table. Sit. They did, slowly, suspiciously. You have until the end of the month, I said. Valerie frowned. Excuse me? This is no longer your residence. You are guests now, temporary ones. You have 21 days to vacate. You can't be serious, Madison snapped. I'm completely serious. You don't have the authority. I held up the papers. I am the authority. And your access is revoked. Staff has been informed. Locks are being changed. Valerie's face flushed a dark red. You ungrateful child. After everything we did for you. What did you do for me? I stood. Leaned forward. You took me in after my mother died, not out of love, but out of control. You dressed it as charity while feeding me scraps. You kept me one step below your daughter, even as I scrubbed the same floors. You told the world I was family, but you treated me like staff. As a kid, I used to wait by the mailbox, hoping for a birthday card with my name on it. Never came. On Christmas, I wrapped gifts for your guests, but never opened one for myself. At dinners, I stood behind chairs pouring wine while Madison played piano. You gaslit me for years. Made me feel like I should be grateful just to exist here. Well, guess what? I stepped around the table, walking slowly. I'm done waiting for permission. I don't need your approval. I don't need your love. I needed truth. And I finally have it. Valerie slammed her wine glass on the table. You think this house makes you powerful? It doesn't. You're still that little girl your mother dumped here. I didn't flinch. My mother trusted you. And you turned that trust into servitude. You wore pearls while I ironed Madison's sheets. You hosted galas while I sliced lemons in the kitchen. You went to spas while I cried myself to sleep in a linen closet. Valerie stood up. I won't be insulted in my own home. This is my home, I said clearly. And you don't get to insult me in it anymore. Madison said softly. Do you really hate us? I looked at her.
No.
Hating you would mean I still want something from you. I don't want your apology. I don't need your validation. I don't even want your guilt.
She was quiet now.
I walked to the fireplace mantel, where a portrait of the Morgan family still hung. Valerie, David, Madison. I reached behind it, pulled it down, and laid it flat on the table. I'm building something new, I said. And you're not part of it. I pulled a box from under the table. Old photos, papers, dinner seating charts I once memorized just to feel included. Do you remember this? I held up a seating list from a gala. Everyone had name cards. I had a sticky note, stuck to the kitchen door. I lit a match, dropped it into the box. The paper curled, blackened, and vanished. That's your legacy. Sometimes strength doesn't look like fists. It looks like silence finally broken. It looks like truth finally spoken. I had spent my life trying to prove I belonged.
But now?
I didn't need to belong. I inherited. Madison got up, tears in her eyes. She whispered, You've changed. I said, No. You just never bothered to know who I was. Valerie stood too. Cold.
Defeated.
I hope this house keeps you warm, Emily, because you'll be alone. I smiled. I've been alone before, but at least now, I'm alone on my own terms. The estate was quiet. Valerie's car gone. Madison's closet emptied. I stood in the great hall, holding the new keys. The silence felt different now. Not lonely.
Sacred.
They underestimated me. Thought I was just the help. But I wasn't. I was the eyes that saw everything. The hands that held it together. The heart that never gave up. And now, I'm not behind the curtain. I own the stage. The house was finally quiet.
Not awkward quiet.
Not don't speak unless spoken to quiet. Just still. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. But peace isn't always joyful. Sometimes it's heavy, lonely, and it echoes with everything you lost just to earn it. Valerie and Madison left on a rainy Tuesday. No goodbye. No apology. Not even a slammed door. Just absence. I watched their SUV roll down the driveway from the second-story window. And then I just stood there, holding a mug of coffee I couldn't drink, wearing a sweater David once gave me that still smelled faintly of cedar. That night, I didn't sleep in my old room. I didn't sleep in the master bedroom either. I slept in the hallway, back against the wall, because I didn't know where I belonged yet. When I was 12, Valerie once threw away a drawing I made. It was a charcoal sketch of the estate's garden. I spent hours on it. She saw it and said, That's cute. But maybe next time, draw something that matters. Then tossed it in the trash. I cried in the laundry room for an hour that night. Not because of the drawing, but because I realized I didn't matter to her. Now, standing in that same hallway 2 decades later, I remembered that sketch like it was yesterday. Grief is strange. You'd think I'd be angry or triumphant, but mostly, I was tired. David was gone, the only person who ever chose me. And even though I had the house, the land, the title, I'd never hear his laugh echo through the garden again. Never hear him say, That's my girl. Never get another note from him left under my teacup. Sometimes, the win costs more than the loss ever did. Some relatives reached out after the news of the will went public. Second cousins, old family friends. Most of them wanted to talk or reconnect. But I could feel it. They weren't reaching out to comfort me. They were reaching out to make sure I wouldn't forget them when it came to money. One even had the nerve to ask if I'd be renting out the vineyard section. I said no, and blocked his number. I called Sarah, my college roommate. She was one of the few people who knew my history with the Morgans.
I heard, she said.
Is it true? You own the whole thing now. I hesitated. Yeah, I guess I do. Long pause. I always knew you were meant for something big, she said. But it didn't sound happy. It sounded like she was measuring me now, sizing me up, like I'd gone from friend to fairy tale. People don't always celebrate you when you level up. Sometimes, they just step back and resent the climb they didn't take. 2 weeks in, I had a breakdown in the greenhouse. I was watering the succulents David and I once tended together. I dropped the can, fell to my knees, and cried so hard my ribs ached. Because here's the thing, it wasn't just David I lost. It wasn't just my past. It was the illusion of family. I had spent so long trying to be accepted by Valerie and Madison that I never asked myself what I was sacrificing just to belong. The truth? I wasn't mourning them. I was mourning who I used to be around them. That eager, obedient girl who thought love was earned by servitude. I started revisiting David's letters. He'd left several in a box marked Emily. Open when you're ready. Each one was short,
Sweet.
and filled with the kind of love I had begged for my whole life. You were never invisible to me. I always saw how hard you worked when no one else did. You changed the air in this house, Em. Never forget that. I reread those lines until I had them memorized. Sometimes the loudest kind of healing is sitting in a room that used to reject you and letting yourself be seen by yourself. No applause, no validation, no one to witness it but you. I drove to the family plot for the first time alone. Brought white roses, a flask of the scotch he used to sip by the fire. I knelt beside his stone. I wish you were here to see it, David, I whispered. Then I smiled. But I think you already did. I poured a little scotch into the soil. The rest I drank. Bitter, strong,
Real.
just like everything he left me. Back at the estate, I took down every painting Valerie had hung. All those stiff oil portraits and curated decor. I replaced them with photos from my childhood. Me and David at the farmer's market. My mother holding me in her lap. A candid shot of me reading by the fountain, unaware someone had captured it. For the first time, the house started to feel like mine. Not just on paper. In presence. Sometimes you don't lose family when someone dies. You lose them when you finally admit they never really saw you. And sometimes, that's the only way you're reborn. They say healing isn't linear. It's a spiral. You pass the same places again, but from a higher vantage point. The first few weeks after they left, I didn't do much. Didn't redecorate. Didn't throw parties. Didn't post any triumphant Instagram updates. I just sat with the stillness. Let the dust settle. Let my hands relearn what joy felt like without guilt. One morning, I walked barefoot through the East Garden. It had been years since I let myself touch the soil. Valerie used to say, "Don't get dirty, Em. You're not here to play." But that day, I took off my shoes, dug my fingers into the earth, planted marigolds, and cried as the dirt stuck to my skin. It was the most sacred thing I'd done in months. I reconnected with Ellen, David's old housekeeper, who'd been let go years ago after questioning Valerie's behavior. I invited her back for tea. "I always knew you'd rise," she said as we sat in the sunroom. She brought with her warmth. Stories. Banana bread that tasted like safety. We laughed about the time Madison slipped in her heels on the marble floor and blamed me for it. For the first time in years, laughter didn't feel like a rebellion. It felt like returning home. I also started therapy. Dr. Melissa, calm, kind-eyed, no nonsense. The first session, she asked, "What does freedom feel like for you, Emily?" I paused, then said, "Scary, but holy." We unpacked my childhood, the erasure, the perfectionism, the fear of taking up space. She said, "You were trained to be obedient. Now you're learning to be authentic." Weeks passed, then months, and slowly a vision formed. I decided to turn one wing of the estate into something meaningful, a center for girls aging out of foster care. A place to teach them skills, give them housing, provide mentorship. Because I knew what it felt like to have nowhere to go. And someone finally giving you a key. I called it the House of Belonging. Named it after something David once wrote in his will. You don't just need a roof. You need a place that reminds you every day. You deserve to be here. Word spread. Former staff reached out. Cooks, groundskeepers, even an old gardener named Raphael. I heard you're doing something good with the place, he said over the phone. I want in. Within a month, I had a team. Not employees.
Partners.
We gutted the old guest wing. Added bunk beds. Painted the walls with murals. Set up therapy spaces, a library, and a kitchen filled with comfort food. One day, a letter arrived from Madison. Handwritten. I won't pretend to understand everything. But I watched you from a distance all my life. You were never weak, Emily. I was just too busy being celebrated to see you.
I'm sorry.
I'm pregnant now. And I think I finally understand what love without control looks like. Thank you for showing me that, even if I didn't deserve it. I didn't know how to reply. So I didn't.
Yet.
Forgiveness is a long road. But maybe it has a path after all. That night, I walked through the estate after hours. The rooms glowed softly. Girls from the program were laughing in the den. One of them was braiding another's hair. Another sat reading by the fireplace. The house that once echoed with hierarchy now hummed with healing. I looked at a framed picture on the wall. Me and David on the porch swing. He's laughing. I'm blushing. It's the only photo where I didn't know I was being watched. And I whispered, you didn't just leave me a house. You left me a purpose. Some inherit wealth. Others inherit wounds. I inherited both. But I also inherited the power to choose. And I chose to build a world I could finally breathe in. If you've made it this far, then maybe you've seen yourself in my story. Maybe you were the helper, the forgotten one, the shadow in someone else's spotlight. Maybe you were told that love was something you earned by staying quiet, by staying small, by staying out of the way. And if you were, I just want to say this. You were never the problem. They just couldn't see brilliance in a reflection they didn't expect. When David passed, he didn't leave me money. He left me clarity. He saw me. And in a world where so many of us feel invisible, that's the most radical kind of love there is. You don't have to inherit an estate to claim your worth. You don't have to wait for someone to die before you live. You can start now, right here, with your voice. I want to invite you to do something brave. In the comments below, tell me, what's the one thing you wish someone had seen in you? What truth have you been holding that no one asked about? I promise, this space is safe, because you are not alone. Family isn't who shares your blood. It's who shows up when it storms. It's who hands you a coat when they see you freezing, not who tells you to toughen up. I built my family from ashes, from girls who had nowhere else to go, from people who had every reason to stop loving, but chose to love anyway. That's what I want this channel, this space, this community to be. If this story touched you, if even one sentence rang true, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs reminding that they are enough. And if you haven't already,
Subscribe. Not just for me,
but for you. Because every week I'll be back here with more stories like this. More truths unspoken. More voices that were never supposed to rise.
but did.
Just like mine. Just like yours. And if no one's told you lately, you matter. You are not too much. You are not too late. You are not too broken. You are becoming. And I see you now. Family is not who shares your blood. It's who shows up when it matters. Share your truth in the comments. Subscribe for more real stories. You belong here.